Then I got that other one, the Sound Alchemy, the Annie Williams chick. She's pretty cool.
Well, that 432 one was interesting because I'd seen it. I actually saw it a year ago as well, and it was under a different title. It had a different name or whatever, like in YouTube. And I'd seen it. I was like, "Oh, that thing was awesome!" And then it was a couple weeks ago. I went searching for it again. I was like, "Oh, what was that thing called?" I couldn't find it. Like, god damn it! Because I've seen these other ones. They weren't as good. I thought, or interesting.
Yeah.
And then I was digging, and then boom, it popped up under a different name yesterday, and I clicked it, and I was like, "Oh, what's this one?" And they changed the name.
Yeah, real science. Guy spent some time.
Yeah, it was super duper interesting.
Yeah.
You're like, what? Like just the measurements of the moon versus the sun versus the Earth and all this stuff. You're just like, holy cow! Like, it is like the fractals or whatever. But that's it. I mean, that's it.
I always thought it was kind of interesting that the moon is the same size in the sky as the sun. Like the odds of that are like pretty high.
Yeah, and what were those numbers? It's like 2,100 miles across. You know, then you divide that in half, it's 432, and the moon was like 10 times bigger, or doubled that, and again, all these crazy numbers.
Yeah, there's 2160. That's a number that comes up.
Yeah. So yeah.
Whenever you have frequency and sound, you have geometry, and then you have math.
Uh-huh.
You know, it makes sense that you can build on patterns that, you know, that like the solids, you know, like the patterning of solids.
Yeah, I mean, just talk about, we were talking about before, is things like, you know, are they even there? You know, when it measures it down, it's not even there. So you're like, it's kind of interesting, you know, dwelling in the dog shit of like politics, you know, then like trying to pull my brain up into like higher thinking. It's always fun to go back and forth. But yeah, that's the plan, is to move the shop out here because I got the stairs. So Rosie's moved downstairs, so Vesna's yoga massage client room now needs to get bumped to where my shop is. It's like a domino effect where things are gotta move. And then, so I'm gonna get the shop out here this winter, and then next summer I'm gonna cut the top off, pretty much bump it up 2 floors, just double it, or just rip it apart and do a whole new one. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure, because it's 12 by 16. It's kind of small-ish. I just want to like.
It's cozy.
It is cozy. Well, we lived in it when we were renting a place out for Airbnb, so the whole family come sleep out here. It was kind of fun. Like, feels like you're camping in your own backyard.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I added, this painting was new. This was, well, it's kind of, my friend Nick, who is colorblind, we were talking about being colorblind. And,
what did he think?
yeah, he's like, oh, it's a lot of gray. Well, we were talking about being colorblind, and then the concept of like, I can say, you know, what I think red is, you know, I might be seeing red, but you're seeing green.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Nobody knows.
No one, you can never talk about it. Well, then there's like that, remember that dress thing on the internet a couple of years ago? It was like a blue dress or a yellow dress. And half people see it, they're like, oh, it's blue. The other half people see it, like, oh, it's yellow. You're like, what?
No, I never saw that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And then the other one's a sound one, Yanny or Laurel. And it's like half the people will hear Yanny. It's just a guy's voice saying Yanny, Y-A-N-N-I, or Laurel, L-A-U-R-E-L. And I'll hear it, it's like Yanny, and you're like, I hear Laurel, like, literally, it's like that different. And it's like blows people's minds. Which goes back to what we were talking about, you know, when we did our last podcast, just the whole polarization paradigm thing.
Neuralistic programming.
Yeah. Well, Yanny Laurel, when they said it's a high frequency, it's a frequency issue in terms of older people. It kind of broke up into age somewhat, I guess. I don't really remember all the details, but saying the higher people couldn't hear the high frequency or low whatever. But it seems kind of crazy. We're living in like parallel universe right here.
Well, they were talking on NPR today about there's a new study that was saying that there's like a 50% probability that this is all a simulation.
Oh, that was on NPR?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like Scientific America just,
Yeah, 50% chance that it's a simulation. You're like, wow, it'd have to be really a really good one, but they can't prove it, and ever. They're basically like, but we'll never prove ever that it is, most likely.
Yeah.
A simulation. But it is interesting that they're at least thinking of that. Yeah, they're maybe just starting to grasp the reality of higher dimensions. I think is what
I got
they're maybe they'll stub their toe.
Yeah, well, I got a friend on Facebook who the last week has kind of gone, I'll say gone crazy, but that's what he's obsessing on, finding glitches in the Matrix to prove. He's trying to come up with his own proof system. I'm like, I'm going to prove.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a, well, he's got his whole evidence. He's talking about being, okay, so get this, he's showing all his evidence, like he's constantly showing clips of, hi Doug Woof, we're talking about you now. He'll watch this. About his Facebook stuff. He's like, I'm trying to send messages to Facebook, and it's locking up and won't let me do it. And then his phone is ringing. He's getting all these phone calls from like bots. He's bots, you know, like Russian whoever bots, AI bots, and are constantly ringing his phone. And he's like, kind of going crazy about it because you know it's massive. You know, you could call it paranoia, you could call it whatever.
Delusion.
That's just what he's doing. So I sent him a copy of my book because he was talking about something last week, and I was like, oh, I wrote a book about that. You're talking about this exact same thing, blah, blah, blah. He's like, send it to me. So it was like this spontaneous, I did it that day, because I had like 10 copies, and anyway, it showed up there yesterday. He's in like Oklahoma now. He used to live here, is how I know him.
Yeah.
It showed up in the mail, and I'd sent it in a nice little cardboard paper bag thing. It was nice when I sent it, I promise. It was all chewed to shit, like it'd been driven over by a truck, and it was coated in, like I said, like tea tree oil, and remashed in there and then wrapped in another plastic bag. Like, it either just got severely damaged. So it's just adding to the... He thought... So the funny part is, he's like, I got this thing in the mail. He was filming because he thought it was some weird thing, part of the paranoia. Like, he's like, what's this thing I ordered from China? I don't know. But then he unwraps it and it's got my name on it, like in Alaska. He's like, oh, it's from Jake. Like, so it's kind of funny.
Consciousness affects randomness, you know?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, about that, I mean...
Yeah, it does. And so you
were talking about that.
Find evidence of it because, you know, it does. You can, you know.
Well, you had talked about that computer thing where the little chicks...
The random event generator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it started to become less random because of the chicks, or what? What was it?
A random event generator randomly makes zeros and ones, 50-50. And what they did is they put a random event generator on a cart in a box and ran it forward like it was a go-kart, and it randomly made right and left-handed turns. Like 1 would be left, 0 would be right. And so it was randomly making right and left-handed turns, just in the box. Well, they had baby chicken eggs, and the baby chickens hatched, and the baby chickens imprinted on the random event generator like it was its mom. You know how animals will do that. Oh, you're my mom. The first thing they see, they think it's its mom. And because they had done that, the random event generator kept turning back towards the chickens. And they found that if they put a light out, or they put a light on the random event generator and a plant next to it, the plant will get the random event generator to turn back towards the plant, because the plant wants the light. Yeah, and so your consciousness affects randomness. You know, that's your manifestation. Oh, I thought of something and then it happens. Or you think about, oh, I want to be rich, and I want a job, and then a job comes. Well, you can't do that. Right? You can't manifest, you know, that's our divine nature, you know, and our ability in this wonderful universe. It's not as...
Oh, I know. And
I don't think it's as harsh as we think it is.
Yeah.
You know,
well, those were some things, just thinking of the 432 and people like constantly living in the vibe or whatever. But I've written down some quick things I remembered about just beyond coincidence things. And the one that got me a couple times this last summer, in one different places, I did a couple last year and a couple years before. But anyway, so I was coming down the bike path, running or jogging or bike. No, I was walking long enough and I see someone up there. I'm coming on the bike path out here by the swamp or whatever. From a long distance I can see someone coming walking the other direction. I'm like looking kind of, you don't want to stare at someone as you're coming, you know, just polite general interaction. I see him coming, I'm like, oh, who's that? And I'm jogging, and they're looking, I'm like, oh, it's so-and-so. I think it's so-and-so. Like, there they are. Bob, whoever the hell. No, I remember who it was. It doesn't matter who it was. I was like, they're so-and-so. here they come. I'm looking, they're like, yeah, here they come. They got real close, I finally look up, it's not them, it wasn't them. Like, oh, it wasn't them.
I've had
Like, okay. Like, fucking 2 seconds later, 100 yards down the trail, there was the real person.
Oh,
Literally.
yeah. Interesting.
Dude, blew my mind. I was like, what? Are you fucking kidding me? Because the one, it was it.
Yeah.
That's who it was. And it was almost like it was a
Yeah.
fake bot. It was like, I don't know what it was. And that happened a couple times. And that's kind of synonymous
But
with...
you're feeling that.
It was so beyond coincidence. And that's happened
Yeah.
less than 5 times in my life. But each time I was like, what the fuck? That was too
Yeah.
obvious. And that's akin to like, I think of someone and the phone rings. Or whatever, like you've done that actually.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
Andy did it up. Oh, the texted, like
Oh, yeah.
I've had different connections with different friends that's more intense like that. Like my friend John,
Yeah, you're.
more.
Yeah, you can have them with your parents, like siblings. Parents.
I do with my mom a lot
Yeah,
actually.
the mom and dad thing.
And my buddy John, when we were downhill biking a ton, we were like that. We'd be pushing our bikes through the forest, you know, whatever, and then I'd think something, he would say it, or vice versa. It was the funniest thing, like. And I was like, oh, this is like, and there's little snippets, that's the thing, they're like little drops of sand.
Little bit.
And like,
ones.
you know, it's not ever gonna, I don't think it'll ever be some kadoosh big, but you gotta be paying attention enough
Well,
to notice
you're
it.
messing with the potential of time. You know, like there's a lot of potential for things to happen in the future. So things could go all different directions. You know, one thing I've found is when they're teaching people remote visioning, they tell them not to name the stuff they see. Don't put a name to it. That's what I've kind of learned is allowing just images to come through and not put little patterns or stuff around them and just be like, oh look, bring it in through my intuition. You have a feeling about something and just let it be. Just like, oh, I just saw something, but don't put, oh, I saw a green tank.
Yeah.
You know, or I just saw this image of that. And it might change into something else, or it might expound over time if you don't limit it like that.
I remember that time with John. It was with that same guy. And I don't know if I've told you this story. I think I have, but it was so profound. It was like it was a pen. I was at the store trying to buy a pen because I was writing a bunch, and there was like I was at the aisle at Fred Meyer's. This is like 2002 or 3. I was like writing a bunch of ski journal shit at the time, and I was like, "There's $2 pens, there's like $4 pens, and like $6 pens. You know, writing pens."
Yeah.
And I'm poor. I'm like, ugh. I don't want a $1 pen. That's shitty. Like $3, but the $6 one was nice looking. But I was like, nah, I'm not gonna spend $6 on a pen. I'm gonna get the $4 pen, but I wanted the $6 pen. And I took, you know, they're all the same in the end. Whatever. Buy the pen. The next day, it was the next day or 2 days later. Very soon thereafter, it was when me and Buddy were pushing our downhill bikes. We were actually up on a Rainbow Peak. You know, that Rainbow Peak trail goes up. And this is
pushing
like,
your bike up there?
Yeah, this is like March. I'd been kicked off the ski hill, so I had nothing else to do. We pushed all the way up. You know, the trail goes up steep and it kind of flattens off.
Yeah.
Then we biked that huge west face through the forest. Like there's like a big forest. And you know, a downhill bike, you've never really ridden one, but you know, big 8-inch disc brakes, you can go down steep shit easily. Yeah. And we're crawling. You're going really slow, but you're driving through the forest, like, and there's no bushes or shit, and you can just by over logs and stuff. It's super fun. It's kind of opposite of, you know, what you think of jumpy, flowy downhill biking. Anyway, point of the story is, we get way down here, we're in the fucking bushes, we stop for a piss break or whatever, get some water, and right in the debris, like it was all the leafy debris, gray, it's gray, there's no leaves in the trees, they're all on the ground. Right at my feet is the pen. It was
the $6
the $6 pen in the bushes. And we're like miles from trails. We're in the middle of the fucking woods. In the middle.
Yeah, there's the $6.
There was a different color. It was purple, and the one at the store was blue, but it was close enough. I'm just like, and I grabbed it, and I was like, John, I was like,
$6 pen.
look at this thing. He's like, yeah, it's a pen, dude. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I wanted to buy this at the store yesterday. And you know, that sounds crazy, but it made sense to me.
Oh yeah.
Right. What did I write down? Why did I up? Well, that comes back like the quarter trick. I mean, that was how to practice for that. Was that book Prometheus Rising? This guy Robert Anton Wilson, you know, he kind of wrote it all following Timothy Leary's the shock. It's kind of a description of the chakras in like scientific terms. He calls them the circuits, the 8 circuits, and if you're dwelling at these different, we talked about it last podcast. Like people are dwelling at different levels.
Sure.
of like consciousness, and that's what they're dealing with at the time. But the quarter trick was just that. The quarter, you know, a quarter is such an easy, small, tiny thing to think about, and you kind of obsess. You just pray for quarters, pray for quarters. I want to see quarters everywhere. And pretend you're finding them. Like, oh, is there a quarter? And you'll start finding quarters, like in random places on the ground, like all the time. And then even when you get change at the store, you know, getting change. Here's my dollar. Here's a quarter. Oh, quarter. Even though there's a real good reason why you got a quarter handed to you, you're just like, oh, universe, thanks for the quarter. You know, it's the universe because it's such a tiny thing. So the two rationales are there's quarters everywhere and you're fucking gone crazy and you're obsessing when you see them.
Oh, yeah.
And it's this confirmation
You want a
bias.
certain car, and then all of a sudden you start seeing all those cars. Oh, there's another beat up.
Yeah. But then you find the quarters in the random, you know, then they're in the middle of the street, they're on the sidewalk, they're under a fucking rock, you know, whatever.
Well, they're saying now people are having these experiences where Bigfoot's giving them.
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot is
Giving them a
like
quarter?
or marbles.
What?
Yeah, people have found hundreds of them. Like just in random places, they'll just find a marble.
Like in the
And
woods.
so the people that are having these experiences are having Bigfoot encounters, and they're saying that there's a lot of people in the field that study Bigfoot and extraterrestrials will tell you Bigfoot is multidimensional. He could walk. It could walk through walls. It's extra. It could be extra dimensional, quantum something.
Yeah.
But there are people that are having these experiences with Bigfoot coming in their house and writing on pads of paper, answering questions and leaving marbles. Yeah, watch Grant Cameron's new video on it. Very interesting guy.
Write that down.
And there are a lot of encounters, right? So Bigfoot's got a lot of traction lately. You know, there's a lot of people that are having encounters with what they call Bigfoot. Some people are seeing tracks, some people are seeing them in the distance.
Well, it's interesting you talk about marbles, because literally 5 minutes before you got here, I was just like fucking reading through Facebook, reading politics bullshit, and someone randomly had posted a story about their kid had gone to school because there was a marble that was stuck in the windowsill, like in the classroom. It was wedged in the track.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was just a marble story, and it was wedged in the track, and he was bringing the screwdriver to school to dislodge the marble.
Got in trouble.
No, she was a hero because no one could get it except he got it.
Oh.
He pulled the marble out.
He knew how to use a screwdriver.
Yeah. Anyway, the one story is a 5-year-old with a screwdriver. But that's what I first thought when I first seen it. I was like, he's gonna stab. They're gonna think he's a terrorist.
Yeah.
But he freed the marble.
Yeah.
Another random trick. I was just thinking, scribbling notes. But yeah, you even said like need a job, need a house, need a ride, any of that stuff. But I swear, well then that.
You gotta stay optimistic, you know. In life.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
That helps.
Yeah, it does. You know, it's your personal power.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and the ability.
You start going down to anxiety or depression and all that. It does.
Well, that's where the NAD.
That is a lot of how you look at yourself and your personal identity, and it's usually not a healthy perspective.
Yeah. Well, that's where I swear that NAD booster stuff. That's the only way I can describe it. It's a sense of well-being, and it's almost you fall into like the 432. You're like, oh, it's like I don't know. I wrote that down for NAD to 432. It seemed related.
Yeah. Anything that helps you sustain your vital energy is going to keep you more optimistic and help you deal with situations better.
Well,
you know, and that's a lot of, that stuff does help significantly.
Well, and I thought I did a random experiment the last 2 weeks in terms of that. Like, I'd been exercising a ton. 4.5 years running, biking, exercise all the fucking time. And I've taken random breaks, but kind of sporadically. But you're supposed to like take a good 1 week, 2 week, month off every year in general. Like when you're exercising aggressively. Just in terms of like if you're actually actively running, biking hard,
Let your body heal up.
Yeah, you gotta like kind of just take a break sort of thing, especially for running. Anyway, I've been going hard all summer, all year basically. I kind of went all through the winter. No, I took last like December off because my hip was hurt, so kind of forced a break. But this last 2 weeks, I had this big race 2 weeks ago, the Girdwood one, and then I took 2 weeks off from running. I didn't do anything. And like the first week I was kind of achy, like and then last week I had no aches or pains, no nothing. But because I've been talking about just holding your power in whatever place you're at. I was so used to being beaten down. It's like a common thing to go work hard, come home, go running hard. I've been beating myself down for years. Is the point of the story. I took 2 weeks off, and was like recovered, felt great. And all this last week, I was just like spinning, like felt just high and focused and great. Just life was good. It is good. I'm not saying it's not. Anyway, point of the story is last night I did like a 2.5 hour bike ride, like on the Zwift trainer thing. It was a big long 35-mile route, 2.5 hours, and felt great doing it. And then, and that's how it is. You work out, it kind of catches you the next day, and then today, I woke up. That's how it is. I'll wake up like, oh yeah, start another day, let's go. Then it's like by 9, 10, 11, you're like, we're not, dead. I was tired today. Like napping, I felt like I had a nap on the couch and all that vital creative energy. And I can't even muster the energy to think creatively or ambitiously or...
I've had a few of those days.
Yeah, like,
like, oh man, I think today's telling me just to go home and go to bed.
Yeah, and like, sometimes in 90% of the time I push through and ignore it, but then... Because you're like, do I need to listen? But then there's times like, oh, I gotta listen to it. And like, so throughout the day, today I was like tired, and I was kind of napping on the couch, and it was just it was a noticeable factor. I was like, what did I do? I worked out hard, and then my point of it all would be, am I doing myself any good? Like, by exercising all the time, right? In general, in terms of higher consciousness, productivity, creativity, it seems like exercising all the time is like a hindrance. That would be the thesis.
Well, you could go meditate in the cave, sit there for 40 days, and
well, and that's the thing. That exercising is a meditation.
Turn into a piece of mush.
Yeah. No, I know.
Which
I think it's
is
just
a
moderation.
risk. A lot of those guys that do that, some of them don't come out of it all that well. These guys that go meditate in caves for 2, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, a month, they'll do that for a lot. Right. Some of them just...
Their brain just slowly mushes out.
Yeah, they don't recover from it. Some are, you've got to... You don't want to send your 9-year-old kid in to do that, right? You got to know your growth pattern. You got to be growing in that by doing that. If you're just sitting there not doing anything, you should probably go get a job.
Yeah.
Right, that's not what you're doing. But if you're in there meditating and you're like doing something, you're like awareness, and you're astral projecting, and you're like totally loving it and learning a lot. Hey, you stay in there, and some people force themselves into experiences, and some of them get it and some of them don't. But
yeah, I remember that.
I don't think it's something everybody, those experiences that going into those caves, it's not made for everybody.
Well, that was just talk about getting a job. I remember those years for me, like 23, 24, 25, 26. That was, I would say, the low point in terms of like, I'd been so high, growing up here, we're skiing, high all the time, but no reference point, not grounded.
Oh, yeah.
I
That's
remember
common.
just like floating in the clouds, and then it was, I don't like to say Vesna, she grounded me. It was the whole polarized, like, female, kadoosh, and then, like, I, fell out of the, and then, like, I talked about the last podcast, like, my mind it fell into politics and fell into, like, the dualist nitty-gritty of things, and it was like, I felt like Icarus had fallen, and I'm not blaming a wife or anything, and it was just an interesting time, and I had to, like, work my way out of it, like, being, like, because I didn't have a career, I didn't have any job skills, I didn't have any ambition outside the skiing.
Those years you see higher rates of suicide. Like I studied Siberian shamanism. One of the shamans, one of the things they told me, they're like, a lot of times a person's personal power, their coup, their energy, their aura, is the weakest from like 17 to 23.
Oh, really?
Weakest in their life.
Interesting.
As a kid, you're happy, you're go lucky, but in those years, you don't know what you're doing. You're being told you have to do this and do this and this. You don't know, and so you're confused. You got anxiety.
What did you do?
It's tough, and everybody. Then you kind of start figuring out, and you spend a bunch of years healing from the damage you cause yourself not knowing it.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
that's what happens, you know, you're like, oh man, what the fuck, I just kind of wasted my life. And then in that retrospect, you learn a lot of lessons and you grow up.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I think we're evolving so much. The lessons that we were learning, our parents, a lot of them didn't learn, so there was no reference point.
Uh-huh.
You know, and yeah, not always. I think some parents probably are better at it than others.
Uh-huh.
But it's just hard, and who knows why it is like that. But you do just see that the general
Yeah.
kids having issues, and it's more and more. You know, the kids are having a harder and harder time, and you know, I'm sure with this thing with COVID, it's absolutely not helping. I'm sure some kids, you know, there's probably a percentage of kids that are actually not doing bad. They might be thriving on it. The self-learners.
Well, that's
You
my
know,
kid's like on her, you know, on her phone, you know, on her iPad. She's actually, Rosie's funny as far as watching my kid deal with it. Like, she has her friends, and she's actually started skateboarding at the park a lot. Like, so she's been getting out.
Yeah.
But she's been also on her phone a ton, like watching YouTube movies or whatever. And I'm like, do your homework, do your things, and I'll have to say it a few times, and she'll do it. But she gets really motivated on like, she's moving into a new room, so she's like, she'll like, she loves like interior decorating things, like, and gets all into it. So I kind of just like, I try to like I'm like, do your homework. You have these things you have to do, and try to make it clear that like you can do whatever you want. Like, she literally does whatever you want. We help her. We buy her toy, you know, skateboards and shit to do those things. But you have to do the shit we tell you to do. Like, the balance of like restrictions versus like go have fun. You're a kid, and and I said to her today, I was like, it's almost like you don't need any friends. Like, I was half joking, but she's like happily hanging out around the house.
You don't need 500 good friends. You know,
Yeah,
you
you
only
need a
need
couple.
Really, you know.
Yeah, and that's
We
where-
are social creatures.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't get me
exactly.
wrong there. It is, you know, it's not good for you to.
Well, and that's what she's done. She's gone, her circle of friends has gone from going to school and having all these kids to like 2 or 3 really good friends. It's like separated the weed to like, these are my friends. And so it's interesting to watch. I mean, what's Mason been up to? Is he a senior this year?
Sophomore.
Or sophomore?
He's got it.
Like, is he going to school or homeschool, or how's he doing it all?
He's enrolled in South, and they're doing it over the computer through Zoom. So he logs in every day and does his classes, and he's doing all right with it. He, I would put him in the class of a self-learner. Like, he's always trying to figure stuff out and got some objective to build this and has passion to do this and that. And I'm glad for that. Yeah, I think he's doing okay with it, you know, and I'm thankful.
Yeah.
I know a lot of parents are having a hard time. I know I would have had a hard time with it as a kid, getting on the computer, logging in, and doing my homework.
Yeah, I couldn't even.
Yeah, it's
I remember school just feel like
it's
such.
not easy, but I think when it comes to, you know, what potential careers these kids have now, they've got to be able to self-learn and self-educate. You know, basically, what they teach you in school is how to do that, basically. They don't give you a lot of information on anything. They teach you how to look stuff up, how to process this, and they give you the basics of it. But if you got to be a self-learner. You know, you look at Tesla or Elon Musk or all these guys, all the guys that are entrepreneurs, they made what they're doing. They've had to figure it out by learning how to do it. Nobody taught them how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and
Have you seen that movie, The Social Dilemma, or heard about it? It's about social networks, social media. The gist of it is that they interviewed a bunch of like ex-Facebook people, Twitter people, Google people, and it's like this big confessional. They're all ex-employees of big tech, and the gist of the video is to show the dangers of social media, how it's ripping apart fabric of society. Because it's changing, I shouldn't say it's ripping apart, it's changing it. And I've heard about this movie, it's kicking around, everyone's like, oh my god, watch this movie. I got like 2 minutes into it, and I realized it's the biggest, like, no duh, because I thought you already knew this. They're trying to sell you shit. The whole reason why Facebook is free is because you are the content, you are the consumer, and then the ads are coming in front of your face.
Advertisers.
And the whole movie was like this hour-and-a-half expose on that. It's like, no duh. And they want to get your screen time up, so it's designed in certain ways to trick your endorphins to like see a trigger, a notification, and you're like, the endorphin, and it's like yeah, no duh. Like I thought it was a big no. It's like when the same thing when someone like, you go to a mall, you walk in this corner and there's a sign or there's a stuff for sale on this corner by here. They're setting up the store to sell you shit, or at the counter there's gum right here. And so I saw that. I'm like, okay, got it. And it was still a good movie. It was interesting because it had cool graphics showing the way, just the way the kid's on his phone and the imaginary people on the backside are like trying to get him, like send him a notification from the girl. Did it like AI intelligence kind of like, and that's where the stuff's going. That's the thing is they like, they'll send you a notification like, let's get his attention back. You know, these random like Apple News will pop on your phone.
Well, a friend of mine, she started talking a lot about diapers to see if they would bring started sending diaper ads, and it did. She didn't put anything on her phone. She was just talking about diapers, and they started sending the diaper ads. You know, so they are listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
at some point, even if like she was on the phone and talking about diapers, whatever, they shouldn't be listening in like that. But it took them a while to do it. But she said, yeah, finally I started getting diaper ads.
Yeah, there's tons of videos on YouTube showing people doing that test, so you know what's happening.
Yeah.
You don't talk about blowing things up, I guess. Like, I don't know how, but then that would be the next test. It'd be like, start, saying something like that to see if the FBI comes being like,
Men in Black.
Yeah. But my point,
they've been watching you for a long time.
Yeah. But my thought on the social dilemma thing, here's your phone, here's the front end, I'm a consumer, here's the back end, the creators. And this content that you're obsessing on is getting created. So the Facebook model is each person is creating the content and everyone's obsessed on your social But then you have like Instagram or you have like YouTube where, there's like passive creation, which would be taking a picture of my food, or active creation. And this is just off the top of my head. Is like YouTube, I'm going to make a video about this thing, any topic, and then show people. So you're a creator versus a consumer is the difference. You're on one end of the front or the other end of the phone.
Yeah.
And that's my take on it as I've developed it, is like, and I've shifted, like, the kids want them on screen time, screen time. But this is like the shifting of the world. The world is going to screen time. It's not to say I want them to just be on their phone all the time and not go outside and have real world things, like, because that's still super important. But to see the technology for what it is, the way the world's going there, whether they wanted to or not, and at least, and that was literally why I started this podcast and started a YouTube channel and all these things, because I was trying to wrangle some control out of it. Because it's like this thing, and I tried to like quit, like I'm not going to look at my phone, I'm not going to look at the internet, but we want so much information, like our brains, I'm addicted to just like stuff.
Oh, you get into a trance.
Yeah. Well,
a city has a trance. You go to Anchorage and you get into a certain mindset. It's a trance. You go to Manhattan, it's a totally different energy. Durban's got a different energy. They have different trances. One news media after another. There's an old book called "The Medium is the Message." It's about how the media can play a message to you.
Marshall McLuhan.
You've heard about it. That's fascinating. Yeah, it's a really fascinating book. It
was written in like the 50s.
Yeah, but it talked about how what you're saying, the medium is the message, and how the presenter presents what he's talking about really can warp your views of what he's talking about.
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking about that nowadays. Fake news and all this stuff. It's interesting. We learn from other people's perspectives, though.
Well, I just read of an interesting study earlier today. It was talking about as a Scientific American. Doug Wu had linked it again. It was basically the theory that, say I'm on social media, the echo chamber. If I always click on right-wing news, I'm going to get links to right-wing news. Or you're going to click on left-wing, you're going to get links to that, and you're going to just more polarize that's the thesis. So they did a test. They took a group of left-wing liberal people and put them in a group, like a real-life group, and then right-wing people put them in like 10 groups and people in each group or whatever, and then had them discuss super hot-button topics. So, you know, the left-wing group, you'd imagine what they would talk about: abortion, gun control, immigration, and then the right-wing talk, you know, same thing. And the thesis would be that they would just become, if the right-wing guys are talking about guns, they're going to be like coming out, and then when they do the review, you would think they'd be like, rah, rah, gun, 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 like, and the left would be like, rah, rah, pro-life, whatever. But they found that they actually became more homogenous, like more moderate, actually. They split them up, and then the two groups like became moderate, kind of back towards the middle. And this is astounding. It's kind of a groundbreaking.
But they split them up.
They split them up
But
on purpose.
That's
yeah.
that's what's interesting is they a lot of times when you're battling somebody, their reaction strengthens your battle towards them. And if that person just lets go and doesn't battle you, sometimes it'll change your perspective on it. And that's kind of what you're saying is they separated them, let them play out
it's
their
like
games.
the polarization, yeah.
And they weren't battling each other, which kind of supports it, right?
Yeah, they weren't, so they're separate, and then they like kind of homogenize. Like
I had an experience that this may relate to it. Back years, about 20 years ago now, I was having a hard time getting over a cold. I was actually living with you in Corbett.
I remember that.
Right? I kept getting sick, and I kept fighting this cold. I was kind of hard on myself. I was going up mining, being in cold water. I tried to get over it.
But you had that diesel in your Subaru. That was the start of it, I thought. You had the diesel cans.
I couldn't figure it out,
Yeah.
so I went to Nancy Lee Evans, who's a hands-on healer, went through the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, 4-year hands-on energy healing school. And they literally work with spirits in that school. Like the teacher and the student will be like talking with the spirit. Look up Barbara Brennan School of Healing. They'll be in a room of 50 people talking to spirits. Psychically, you know, there's thousands of people that would have gone through the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. She was the first person that realized that you could teach anybody how to communicate with spirits. It wasn't just like the psychic, like anybody could do it. There's the process. Learn how to develop your higher sense perceptions. Anyhow, Nancy goes, she's in the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. She's a graduate. I go and see her. I lay down on the table, and she's working up my energy field, and she gets to my liver, and she pushes on it. She goes, "Oh, you feel that?" And I go, "Oh, yeah, that does hurt, you know." And she's like, "Oh, your liver has to do with the relationship you have with your father." I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. Kind of haven't been getting along with Dad." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And so she reached in there and starts pulling stuff out. She's working on the cords between my dad and I. And the realization, you know, I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting how I've been hard on myself, and I've just been like, I've just really processed this whole thing with the relationship with my dad, my liver, how you live your life. Everything on the right side of your body is masculine and has to do with your relationship with your father. Everything on the left side has to do with the relationship with your mother. Like, a lot of times you'll see a spirit on the left side of your body, and it's going to be female, most likely. The males will be on the right, and that's the polarity, right? So your liver has to do with how you live your life, and it has a lot to do with the relationship you have with your dad. And so she works on it, and my relationship with my dad cleared up. It was what was the weirdest thing, though, is I noticed my dad changed. My dad's attitude towards me changed. And later, in a workshop with Nancy, brought that up to her. I'm like, oh, Nancy, that was really interesting. Is how my dad changed in the relationship. She goes, wow. First, she thanked me for telling me that, because she goes, yeah, I heal people all the time. They leave, and I don't ever hear what the heck happens. And she thought that made sense, because she was working on the cords between my dad and I, the energy cords. And she goes, yeah, it makes sense that because you healed, that he would have a different perspective as well. And that's, you see that in divorces, you see that in civil rivalry, these cords, or the energy of give me or take or stop, and they're not healthy exchanges.
Did you get better, like health-wise?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it slowly cleared up, and I worked all winter, and it was fine. And
well, it's funny thing about the cord thing. Well, just because like Bell's theorem, I was watching this quantum video last night. I was biking on my 2.5-hour bike ride. I burned through like a bunch of random podcast stuff. Oh, I watched that one you had sent. Well, I got like through the first half of it. That one was pretty interesting. It was late at night. I was like, there's like all the noises and stuff. Oh, the swallows. That's what that one was. That was the one you had linked me, right?
swallows.
The swallows, like the Egyptian. Was that one?
Sound alchemy?
Yeah, they were talking about swallows.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, before I get distracted, I just got diverted. Well, the Bell's theorem is talking about how Einstein that came along, and then Einstein and Niels Bohr were arguing about the interpretation of quantum physics. It was so bizarre. Einstein didn't believe it. Bohr thought it actually was like, they called it spooky action at a distance.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally what you just described, in that, they shoot a particle through the things, and this one runs through a magnet over here, and this one instantaneously will get an opposite spin.
Yeah.
So they're connected somehow.
Yeah.
And
entanglement.
Yeah.
Entanglement theory, how everything is connected.
Well, then
superconductors they think superconductors are like that. Like, you can have a superconductor in your hand, a pile of superconductors, and another pile of superconductors, and you can add a volt of energy to this superconductor, and this pile over here will read a volt of energy without any loss of time, loss of energy, or distance. It could be on the moon or space. That's the technical definition of what a superconductor is. Yeah, and so if we had superconductors, and we might not even be able to find them, because they could be here and we'd never find them, because they might have not clarity. When you look for materials in electromagnoscope, you're looking for polarity. And so they could just be like here, and we don't know them.
And that's how. Yeah. No, I know. You go right down.
Yeah,
as soon as
you
talk,
can't like
just like your
find
brain
them.
goes.
You can't isolate them and say, oh, here's a pile of superconductors, because they're everywhere, but they're not in maybe our perspective. They always say, oh, the observer creates the reality. Maybe our perspective can't create one yet.
Well, that was that crazy one.
Like, get them into a pile.
Yeah. Well, just think about how the 432 squared is the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, just like thinking the speed of light, and I mean that's what
Oh, the Egyptians knew the speed of light.
when they say nothing can go faster than it, or just it's such a crazy thing when you try to like think faster than the speed of light. I don't know if you can do it.
Well, you look at what's happening with these extraterrestrial crafts. They're not traveling across space to get here. They're phasing in.
Yeah.
They're here instantaneously. They're not going through space. They're going through something else. And consciousness is involved.
Yeah.
You look into like the realm where you go when you astral project. That's where the extraterrestrials are. That's the realm where it's one level less dense than this reality.
Yeah.
That everything in this reality is created from those realities. I think there's a whole bunch of different dimensions, but it's one level less dense, and it unless we figure out consciousness, I don't think our science is going to match it, because you see a boundary right in all the science. You're like, but you don't have consciousness. You're not putting the spiritual aspect in any of it. Nobody wants to go there. Now there's guys like Grant Cameron, Stephen Greer, all these guys who have contact with extraterrestrials, and they like, whoa, okay, there's this consciousness thing here. Like, what is going on here?
And that's different than like artificial intelligence. Like, 'cause I guess artificial intelligence is created by a computer trying to like, you know, make a robot that's
one
like
of the
human.
things that they do say is those are the extraterrestrials to watch out for. The ones that are artificial extraterrestrials. Those are the ones that are like, whoa, those are fucking weird. Because you wonder, you know,
I broke that down.
you start getting into the nature of personal identity. You know, it's like, okay, we're all connected. Well, what am I compared to you? Are we one and the same? What's the difference? You know, why did, you know, I've always liked an argument, or one of the questions I always give people is if God made everything, or the goddess, everything was made by that, what did it make it out of? You know, and it had to have made it out of itself because there was nothing before that. Totally makes sense. Well, you know, if God made everything, what do you make it out of? Had to make it out of itself, which means we're all God, goddesses. So if God made everything, we're all God, why would he create a heaven or hell for himself? Why would he hold anything back?
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense. And why would that entity or entities judge itself? It would give it free will. Nothing you do would be really wrong because it would be a lesson in free will. Granted, you know, there are moral codes, you know, but there's we get into this altered self where we think we're less than, I'm nobody.
Well,
no, you're God. We are all, everything, you're equal to me. I'm not putting you above me, and I'm not putting me above you. We're all the same.
Well, it's like I said in the last podcast, it reminds me of like a high school reunion where like you're in a place and at another time, like when you were in high school, say 20 years later you go to a reunion, that's when you're like born, and you're like blink, and you have this like recognition, like it's a real loose analogy that you came from the same base memory, and then you like spring into your new body, and you're like, but there's a recognition there. I guess it's hard. I don't know. It's a loose analogy, but I had written down. Well, I was thinking like of NPCs, like versus bots versus humans. So an NPC would be like a non-playing character in a video game. So like, say you're playing some video game, and you're trucking through the woods, doing whatever. There's players, like say there's a bunch of people, like a multiplayer world, where you log in to go do battles or whatever. You go through, an NPC would be a computer-generated person that's not being played by a real human, right? So you go to the storekeep and you talk to him, and you can tell you're talking to a computer and you're not talking to another person online. That's an NPC. So I've been going on the theory, and then there's a bot, which would be like an artificial intelligence. It's like, so Doug, again, has been going through his Facebook feed of all of his people, and he keeps showing all these people that he thinks are bots. Like, it looks like a person with a face, selfies and whatever.
Well, he's got to watch that, because he could start thinking everybody's bot.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Elon Musk is like, what's the difference? Like, when you die, you're dead. We all are just all computers. We're just all a bunch of wires. And, you know, what's the difference? You know, why can't I put a computer chip in your head?
Yeah.
You know, he's like, you know, literally, like, once you cut the whole top of your head off,
that's
my
thought.
Chip. It's like, no, Elon, you know, at some point you're going to, like, die, and you're going to go into the astral realm, and you're going to meet your guides, and you're going to be like, wow, that's really, this is, you're going to go into the higher realms, and they'll feel familiar.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be like, oh, wow, I was here before. Because that's our nature. Those higher realms where we go, those are where we lowered ourselves dramatically to get here, and so much we forgot about that. But when you die, you know, it's like when you astral project or go into these lucid dreams, they feel familiar. It's because they are. You've been there,
Yeah.
but you forgot.
It's like deja vu.
Jesus will tell you, and I'm not super religious, but one of the cool things Jesus said is birth is way harder than death. Because at birth you forget who you are. At death you start remembering who you are. And so when you're doing your reincarnation stuff, a lot of times you'll reincarnate, you'll pick your parents, you'll have a plan, you'll be like, oh, this is my energy identity, you know, maybe fucked up, like, oh, I'm a man, and you'll spend 4,000 years thinking you're a man, or 4,000 years of reincarnation thinking you're a woman, which in the higher dimensions we are not male or female, which is the weird battle with all this sex stuff. You know, polarity's healthy on this realm. You know, we need polarity to make babies, and you know that's healthy. But on a higher dimension, believe it or not, we're not male or females.
Yeah.
That's the double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Right? It's weird, but
because there's no reason why your soul would have a gender.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so you can like say, okay, I want, you know, and we all pick our parents, and we kind of be like, come on, Dad, you know. Come on, Mom, let's get them together, and you have a baby. And a lot of times what they say is you reincarnate into the same bloodline because the frequencies are the same. And so your memory from the past is easier to get. You know, like I've been told by psychics that my son has been my dad. And so the relationship is there. It thins the veil.
Like alternating relationships, because that.
Yeah, and you could do that in communities. You could say, like Girdwood, everybody in this community knew we were going to be in Girdwood, and we've been in small communities like this for 400,000 years.
Because I've met people, I've known people. You feel that like, I was like, I know you from somewhere. I don't know where, but.
And there is that.
Yeah.
In you know, one thing they do say is like, I think they say a lot of spirits got here and they didn't realize how hard, kind of a sticky place it is. We're like, fuck, and you've been here like 400,000 years, and you're just like, what the fuck? I'm ready to go back to Orion or wherever, where it's not so forgetting. Like, yeah, you're like, you forgot your higher divine nature, and we all have, and we're all. But I think that what happens over time is, you know, time doesn't exist, so who cares, right? Like, okay, what the fuck? It takes 4 million years to evolve. Who cares? Time is not what it is, so it doesn't matter if that person's less evolved or this is fucked up or that fucked up. Don't be so hard on people. But you get back to where you're this perfect God self entity, completely connected back to the divine, and you're perfect. And then you're like, well, what fun is it to be perfect? And then you go, oh. And then you, yeah, I know, so let's like, forget who I am and place this plan and say, okay, Jake, on October 16th, we'll have a story about this. You know, and well, I'll have a baby, I'll be born, I'll forget who I am, and I'll learn what it's like.
Well, it's funny, there's a guy, Gary Vee, I don't know if I told you about. Gary Vaynerchuk's like an online business guru type. And that's his exact stick argument in terms of operating business as an entrepreneur is he doesn't care about the end game, it's the process. He's addicted to the process, and as soon as he's got his most depressing times, he says this is when he actually like, I'm gonna build a business, and when he, you know, and then when he gets the business, now he's depressed, and like he's addicted to the process, like so what you're talking about in terms of like the process of the change to get somewhere, and like once you're there, you might as well just start over again.
Well, a lot of business entrepreneurs are finding out that they make more money when they give a lot more away. But at the same time, they give a lot away, but then what they charge for, they charge a lot for it because people won't buy it unless they think it's of high value. And so if you charge a lot for it, but at the same time, you give your product away like you're giving value. You have to, in all business, you aren't going to buy it unless you get something of value from the person.
Well, that's so funny. That's his other exact argument. You sound like Gary Vee right now, and it's all in context of this. He doesn't talk spiritual, he doesn't talk political, he doesn't talk nothing, but he inadvertently is like a psychologist talking about these things as you watch all his stuff. And he's a New Jersey, real rough talking, cursing, kind of an abrasive dude, and he comes off kind of hard at first. But when you listen to him, I've been watching him for years, that's exactly what he says, though, is, that's his art. That's his approach to social media. Back to what I was saying about the creators versus consumers is, you just create. You act like the flowing funnel, and blast it out there. Don't even think about getting paid. Don't ask for money. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Put it out there. Just be your true self. Don't worry that I'm upset. You know, you could make a chant. You could be obsessed with peanut butter. You could make a goddamn. You could be the peanut butter guy on YouTube. You could be the whatever guy, if that's what you love to do. And all of a sudden, people a year or 2 years, 5 years later, be like, "Oh, the peanut butter guy. He knows all about peanut butter. Like, I'm gonna go see what he did." And all of a sudden, by that time, they're dying to throw money at you because you've been giving away your exact same thing. And that's what Gary Vee literally does. He's this business dude. He's literally giving away everything he does. He's like, I have no reason to be telling you what I'm doing because I've been creating more people doing exactly what I'm doing. You would think that it would be flooding the market and I would run out of money. But he's like, no, the world is abundant. It's endless. Like, we can all be doing this and it'll all be coming back because your nature is to be good, to be giving. Don't even worry about getting paid, but you will get paid. Like the faith that it will.
Wouldn't that end all world wars? You know, the main reason why we have world wars is because, you know, battle for resources and putting people in defensive modes, you know, survival situations. Everybody'd be taken care of. You know, maybe we would stop killing each other, which is, I think, the biggest problem on the planet.
Interesting when you look at the internet, you know, because the internet doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care your race, doesn't care your gender. You're Joe Blow 123. You've got a website that sells something. It's like an even playing field is what it is, and anyone can access everyone in the world equally. You know, assuming you've got internet connection. So it's this huge equalizer. But you think about it in terms of politics. You know, like right wing is the individual. You know, conservative is like the individual. Liberty, I'm an individual, but then communists would be like, we're a group, take care of the group. You know, the individual versus group.
Oh, yeah.
But then,
it's interesting.
In the end, it's like they almost come back to each other if you go to the extreme. Like, you know, that kind of like the intersectional stuff. It's like they try to define you by your group. Like, oh, you know, you're a black chick, so you're a group. You're a black person, but then you're a black female. Then you're a black female with one leg, and you're a black female with one leg and whatever. Like, you're more defined by your identity. You get all the way back down. If you define everybody by their individual, you're back to being an individual. Like the groups, right? So you got black people, Mexicans, white people. That's a big group. They keep breaking them down, so they're inadvertently coming back to like the individual. And that's not like I have an answer. I'm just kind of rambling about that. But it's interesting. But back to what I was thinking about, like,
it does cause a lot of problems. but it's also something that has to be learned. Like there's. You know, Grant Cameron talks about how there are,
write that down. I think I got a pen here.
These people called experiencers that have had contact with extraterrestrials, and he's saying that he knows of about 4,000 in the U.S. and that there's hundreds of thousands around the planet. People have been having experiences with extraterrestrials in South America.
Well, you saw that.
A lot, right? And one of the things that most of them will say that have been on the craft, in the craft, is the craft is alive. That they put their hands on the computer ship and they think, oh, let's fly up to the mountain, and like, poof, it interfaces with your consciousness and they're there. But the craft is alive. It's part machine, part craft. And that's, I think, there's, you know, you go back into a lot of spirituality, and some people, you know, on one side of the spiritual school will say, you don't need a craft. If you need a craft, you're not spiritually evolved. You need to develop your spirit light body and just fly up there and bio-relocate up there. So you're actually doing yourself a disfavor by using a craft at all. But, you know, a lot of extraterrestrials have these craft. I don't think they're unevolved.
Have you seen that interview with the dude? He was on, I can't remember his name. He's an army guy, that's a pilot.
Yeah.
What the fuck's his name? Glavin.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
It's called the Tic Tac UFO.
Yeah, I've seen that recently. An older guy.
Yeah, so he saw the plane, and he was on Lex Friedman the other day. He saw this thing. It was on the radar. And I just heard it's like 2 days ago. I'd heard about it, and I finally listened to a detailed story about it, and it was crazy. He's flying. The radar says this thing's in the area. The sea was perfectly smooth. There was no wind or nothing. They're over the ocean off California. Normally you can see white caps and stuff. He said there's nothing. but then all of a sudden there was like, so basically it sounds like it came out of the ocean, because there's a white water down there, and then all of a sudden the thing was there, and he's like, what the fuck's that? And it flew here, flew there. Oh, that's what it was. He had a lay point, or he was doing a flight mission, and he was going points, whatever. The thing disappeared, and he's like, where'd it go? The guy over the radio, the base camp or whoever, the flight tower, is like, oh, it's at your next lay point. It knew that his program was, he's like, oh, it's at your next lay point. Oh, now it's here, now it's there, boom, it's gone. It was gone. They're like, oh, shit. So he went.
It's almost a little bit of humor in it. So that's what Bigfoot does too. If you look at what he's doing, it's almost a little bit of humor, which it shows you a little bit of benevolence.
So it flew off. He flew home, landed, and the next dude was going out to fly. And he's like, dude, I just saw. You know, the next guy was going to fly. They're changing planes or whatever. And he's like, I'm gonna go film it. And he's like, I'm gonna get out there. So the footage you've seen is from the next dude.
Yeah.
The first guy saw it, told the story. The next guy went out and filmed it because it came back to him. So that's what they were filming.
Oh, there's been a bunch of people in government that have acknowledged the fact that there's these things that are flying, that are doing, that have technology we don't have. They don't know. They can't say anything about them, but they are acknowledging them. They're like, yeah, we see them out often. We don't know whose they are. They disappear. We don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems
we've got to come to a certain point to where we can meet them in our consciousness. I've got a friend, Carrie Carter. She's one of the best psychics in the world. You look her up; she's on the top 5 most powerful psychics in the U.S. And I've talked to her about extraterrestrials often, and she's told me she's had extraterrestrials phase in next to her in the middle of the day, just like woof, appear, and they touch her to ground to her time frame, and it scares the shit out of her. And I asked her, I was like, whoa, what the fuck? I'm like, really? I'm like, what the hell's that all about? I'm like, what do you talk about? And she goes, Andy, there's no language in the human. There's no language. There's no words in the human language that describe what we talk about or what that consciousness is. And I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But you know, where would that communication start? The extraterrestrials could read our mind. They obviously have that ability to pick up stuff, either psychically or just remote visioning. But are they going to learn English? Or they're obviously not going to give us technology at all that we're going to weaponize. I think that's our number one fault, and the reason why we're not having contact with extraterrestrials physically landing on the lawn of the White House is we will weaponize it, and there's no way in hell they're going to do that. They're just too evolved. They're like, what the fuck? You're going to take my craft and go over to Orion and fucking shoot us. What the fuck? We're not going to do that. You guys on the planet Earth, you need to stop killing each other. You know, and then maybe, but yeah, you are seeing people having contact with extraterrestrials. And we're seeing crop circles. Look up this year's crop circles. They're amazing. You won't, this year was the first year I've seen them wiped off, practically off of YouTube. They are censoring them. Because in the past, you used to be able to look up 2018 crop circles, and there'd be 40 different sites that showed all the new crop circles, people walking around. This year, it's nothing but debunking videos. Very interesting.
Well,
I was a little bummed about that. I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, God damn it, those guys are even going after crop circles, and they're manipulating the view, and that's not right. And so when you start looking up these videos, there's the pronounced, like out there, heavily publicized people like Stephen Greer, Grant Cameron, and you get a few good videos, but you hit this wall where I've been like going like, where's the other stuff? Like, where are the other shamans? Where are the other psychics? And you got to weed in there and find anything about it, because most all that shit on YouTube, it's just of no value. There's great stuff, rock climbers, race cars and fucking all that shit. But a real teaching of value, it is hard, because you start talking about flat Earth and you're off there. But on some dimension, I think those planes are flat.
Yeah.
You know, people go, you know, and so, you know, but you say flat Earth, they're just wiped off of YouTube, and so you can't talk about that. You know,
Yeah.
and they may be talking about another dimension.
Uh-huh.
You know, but still, you.
Well, that's such a funny thing. I should be able to talk about anything. I could say the Earth is made of giant turtle back or whatever, on the back of a turtle. Like, why do they care?
Yeah.
They're not leaving it up to us to like decipher through the madness to make our
No,
decisions.
yeah, you gotta.
But as what
When people make mistakes.
well,
We're
back
not
to the
that dumb.
bots, like talking about the bots on Facebook, you know, that's fascinating to me. But thinking about, you know, there's bots and then there's NPCs. You know, say you're in a matrix, say we're in a simulation, the 50% chance we're in a simulation. Are there any humans? You know, you don't want to dehumanize your fellow humans, but are there any of them, you know, on the assumption we're in a simulation, are any of them NPCs, so to speak? Are they? And
Sure.
that lines up into being, you know, artificial intelligence, or an alien, or a soulless something, right? Like, is it a
We
human
could
that doesn't
easily
have a
have
soul?
nanobots in us
Mm-hmm.
that are activated. Like you could.
Well, that's what they say the 5G is all about. is
Well,
that-
there's 5G. There's, you know, you have Elon Musk putting a computer chip in you. Oh, where are they studying artificial intelligence the most? Oh, Wuhan, China. Oh, that's interesting.
Uh-huh.
Oh, what is the vaccines? What's going on with the vaccines? These are vaccines that are, one of them, they were talking about editing the genome of the coronavirus.
Mm.
It just, I'm not putting an unknown technology that edits genomes into my body.
Yeah.
And because
CRISPR.
that's how they use CRISPR. If you look at human genome editing, they use viruses to go in and edit the genome.
Uh-huh.
And so they're going to have this like weird, you know, programmed virus that's supposedly only going after coronavirus. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm not going there. And so, yeah, you could get into that, like, oh, you know, do we already have nanobots in this
Uh-huh.
nanotechnology
What makes me think of the,
that keep us ungrounded, keep us on edge, keep us away from our higher selves that know and feel grounded and have personal power. Whenever you could lower somebody's energy, you can manipulate them. And the evil, there's divine, which is like uplifting. The divine is like astral projecting. You can feel the divine uplift. You raise your frequency. Evil is pulling your energy down.
yeah.
And they're, you know, if you want to go into the woo-woo-woo-woo, there are a group of entities that like to feed off your energy.
Well,
I've seen them.
yeah.
You know, other people I know, spirituals, psychics, they're like, oh yeah, oh, watch out.
Uh-huh.
You know, they, you know, sexual predators, people that like weird stuff, Pizzagate, you know, that's
Yeah.
what, there's all that like, oh, you know,
Yeah, just
QAnon
that.
talking about
Yeah.
that weird stuff. Well, that, you know, that's the evil, that's
yeah.
what
and it's there.
the
And
fucking,
it's terrifying.
the Gnostics were talking about. They're like, whoa, the tail of the fucking devil.
Uh-huh.
That was pulling down the energy of the
Uh-huh.
sexual energy and taking it from
Uh-huh.
somebody else. And so whenever you could keep people, like a large group of people, in fear,
Well, it's the
very
fluoride,
materialized, the
Nazis, the fluoride, the
fluoride,
pineal gland,
all
and,
that stuff, just like wipe them down and constantly feed them, you know, weird stuff to emote energy, like when you're healthy and grounded, you have strong boundaries and you're not affected by other people. In that you build more energy, but when you're in fear and anxiety, you're constantly expelling this energy out, and you constantly need stuff to come in, like so you're taking too from other people or sources or the news or whatever stimulants, which you shouldn't. You should be more grounded and uplifting other people. When you are a healthy person, you inspire other people
Uh-huh.
to grow, you know. But a lot of people, you could just feel it like instantly. In some people, they just you just man, I just spent 2 hours ago.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm thinking about, I'm not obsessing, like, the bot versus the, like, well, back to polarization, like, it's almost like you get that, like, say, you know, just the way people instantly dehumanize each other. It's like each other thinks the other is a bot, say left to right, Biden to Trump, you know, getting into politics. It's like anyone's a Biden supporter, they instantly think Trump's bad for all these reasons in their head, in their paradigm, he's bad, and you can't convince them otherwise, and vice versa. If I'm like, oh, I like Trump, they're like, you're bad, or like, what, you don't like him, oh, you like Biden, the polarity in that regard, and it's like each other thinks the other is a non-thinking, brainless bot, basically, the way each other talks about each other.
Maybe they are.
And maybe they are. Like, maybe I live in a paradigm, actually, I remember my brother said it. We were talking about Mandela effect and parallel dimensions and whatever, and I remember he's just like, thank God we're living in the Trump universe. You know, this is right after Hillary. You know, he's a diehard Trump supporter.
Oh yeah, right. We could all go.
Yeah.
The whole universe went towards Hillary.
Yeah.
And they're all talking about. Yeah.
And it'd be something.
How horrible socialism is now. They shouldn't have voted for it.
And it's just interesting to, like, I don't know.
All possibilities exist, right? That's what they say, you know. So there's people that, you know, had Armageddon in 2000, man. They freaking blew themselves up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're all like, so it kind of comes back to like you were saying earlier, we're all our own God, but it's also like the Truman Show. Think about the Truman Show, that TV, Jim Carrey. Remember that old show, a movie? Oh, it's a classic because it's like such a.
I'm sure I've seen it.
Yeah. So he's a guy in a TV show. For everyone who's never seen the Truman Show, and he doesn't know he's in a TV show. He was born an orphan. The producer of the TV show put him in a world with a loving mom and loving dad in a perfect little world, and he's on TV as a baby, and it's a reality TV show, right? And it's called, his name's Bob Truman or whatever. So, and it's just a TV channel. So the guy's entire life, he's surrounded by actors, and he doesn't know it. Every single person in his entire world is an actor. He lives in this huge flat dome. It's like 10 miles across. With a fake, or it's a big super dome, and it's flat, you know, it's a fake fucking, it's an amphitheater or whatever, right? And he's just a happy dude, and he's kind of nice, he's kind of funny, he's kind of whatever, and everyone loves him. He's like the world's, it's got the most views on TV, because you're in the TV show with him, and
that's how they raised Obama.
But it's such a fascinating thing, because I remember applying that to the real world. If you are the center of your own little universe, and treating everyone else like they're players, in, you know, you're in the center of my universe, you're in the center of your universe, you know, just that concept that everyone is there, like, you know, standing there, and you can be paranoid, like, oh, they're all, you know, that's where it falls into paranoia. Like, there can be a good end of it, the bad end of it is called paranoia, that they're all coming to get you. And but yeah, the Truman Show, how did it work? He finally starts figuring it out. Well, that's what it was. He starts picking apart the glitches in the Matrix. You know, he realizes,
where do they go?
yeah, so he started doing weird shit.
Where's the food come from?
Because he was having a midlife crisis. He was like at work, and he worked at a bank.
Girlfriend?
And he's like 40 years old, and he's kind of bored. And he's like, oh, I'm kind of getting bored. So he started like, I'm not going to go to work today. And he turned down another side street because he'd been such a routine. All the producers thought he was going to. So he turned down a side street, and he sees the behind the scenes of the. And he's like, what the fuck? And all the people are like, whoa. And they like, and go to, and he's like, what the fuck? Yeah. So he starts going crazy. And so he starts like messing with it, and then he finds a video camera, and he realizes then he's going totally nuts, and it's huge news on the TV show because everyone in the world's watching him go nuts as he's figuring it out.
Shit.
And then he like gets on a rowboat and he's rowing across the ocean. I like this picture behind you, by the way. Like, it's kind of wafting. It's really nice to look at.
Yeah.
Makes me think of Hawaii. Anyway, he starts rowing across the fucking ocean to find the edge of the world, right? And he's rowing, and the producer's like, we gotta kill him. Like, we can't let him find out. Like, oh my God. So they start throwing waves and wind and storms at him, and he's almost dying. He's like, oh, fuck. And then the producer's like, oh, okay. And then they stop, and then he bumps into the wall because he's rowing a fucking, he's like lost it all. And all of a sudden his rowboat, like, dunk, hits the side of the fucking building. Yeah. And it's this big, perfectly painted thing, goes way up, and he's just like, what the fuck? And everyone. I want to rewatch it. I've been wanting to rewatch it anyway.
Yeah. I want to watch that.
Yeah. But you can become paranoid in that regard.
Yeah.
Huh. Is it dark out there yet? No, it's not quite yet.
Oh, that's a window.
Yeah.
Does some light come through the painting sometimes?
Yeah, it's kind of cool when it's bright, sunny.
So it lights up. I like the contrast in the colors with the wall.
Yeah. I know, it's going to get gnarly in here if I turn this to my shop. It's got to be good, though. Like, these walls are just sub-walls. I could pull them out, or I might just keep them. Whatever, for snow load. I should probably keep them, actually. It's just 2x4. Not going to span in it. But So yeah, once I got this inside project done, then I'm moving it all out here. But I'm gonna try to keep the studio. I might make it a shop, but have a cool studio aspect to it, like a sound studio. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, the thing about being a bot is you wouldn't be able to like enjoy food or listen to music.
Or do you know you're a bot?
Right.
Well, I mean,
and so that's like the limit. We're not bots. We, you know, and that's not.
Well, he's talking
Right,
bots in
there
terms
is
of social
a-
media. You know, that's the interface is the internet.
Yeah.
This person could be fake on the internet, made by a computer you don't know about. You know, then the next level would be real life bots. And like back to the Truman Show. Say you're driving down the street, and it kind of goes along the lines with like Einstein's critique of quantum physics. Was basically it's like, what, the moon's not there if I'm not looking at it. Basically, all the stuff's here because we all collectively agree that it's here. You know, if no one was like in Girdwood Valley, if every single human left Girdwood Valley, would it still be here? Right? It's more philosophical. Like, no human's there to perceive it. So how are the electrons there? Because electrons and stuff are only there based on how you perceive them. You know, it's kind of a rabbit hole. And like the obvious answer would be like, oh yes, it's still there. It was there before we got there. But like, was it? You know, no one was there to see it.
Well, the space that we're looking at is changed by the time the light gets here. It's completely different. So our perspective is space. Oh, look at space. It's not that.
Oh yeah.
It's totally different. It took like 500 million light years for light to get here,
that's
right?
true.
It's like fucking thing's totally different now,
Oh, that's true.
right?
When you think about
we're
it.
not putting our thought in there, like where it really is. We're going through time and space to get there.
That's think about that. So
Yeah.
like you got space stuff out here, 100 million years wide, or some
Yeah.
arbitrary large number. Yeah, it takes 100 million years for that light to get here. I'm like, oh, there's that star. I looked at it. That's
Yeah.
that star 100 million years ago.
Yeah, we're looking for life.
It
And
could've-
extraterrestrials was like, what a waste. They say, you know, the channelers that channel extraterrestrials, they say, oh, you go to the Ryans or Arcturians or Lyrians. Most of those civilizations don't have stuff. They don't have. You look there and there's nothing but light. They're in a higher dimension. Not all of them, but they're. Those are those realms, you know. Yeah. Have you ever seen or read any Cryon?
Cryon?
Cryon.
Is that a person?
It's an entity channeled by Lee Carroll, and he's been channeling for forever. I remember this first book, the White Book, came out when I was living down the street, down here in 90. We moved in 93, so I was probably 92. I remember getting Cryon, the first White Book. You open up the book, and it's a live channeling. So I am Cryon of Magnetic Service. I know who you are. This is a live channeling. I am present with you right now. You're like, whoa, what the hell? You're like, never read a book like this, right? You're like, very interesting book.
Huh.
You know, in
Which was like kind of what I was thinking, that you're the center of the universe and there's these things coming to you. I mean, it's kind of on that line.
It's interesting. So you go on YouTube and watch Cryon videos, and he's great. I've watched my friend Carrie Carter, who's psychic. She's like, you watch Cryon? I go, yeah, I watch Cryon. She goes, that's Cryon's a great channel. He's one of the
K-R-Y-O-N.
K-R-Y-O-N. And one of the things he'll say is when you turn on a video, he'll say, oh, whoever, this is perfect timing for whoever's watching this. We know who you are. Spirit knows you.
Interesting.
You do not understand how much we love you. You just don't. But we love you. Spirit loves you. The other dimensions love you a lot. We know who you are. This is perfect timing. And these are the messages we have for you. And yeah, it's just he's a magnetic entity, but he channels through Lee, and yeah.
Well, I remember the one you'd sent me, Barbara Marciniak.
Merciniak. She stopped channeling not too long ago.
Well, you sent me a couple of those videos.
The Pleas gave up on the plan,
Oh.
which was a little kind of I keep searching. I'm like, don't give up on us.
Really?
'Cause they gave up on planet Earth like 2 or 3 years ago. They're like,
Well, because you'd send me those couple videos, and I dug through a couple of them. I'm like, that was really interesting.
Yeah,
the way
they
her
have
voice was, just her cadence was like not human.
yeah,
Like,
it was a couple different.
whoa.
It was a group of, they call them the P's, and I've read all her books. She did Earth, Bringers of the Dawn, all these old channel books that were coming out back in the 90s that were all just like, wow, this stuff is really interesting. Yeah, and then, you know, they were doing those moon musing channels, you know, in different places, doing live channels.
And then they stopped, and she's like done.
You know, they talk a lot about the Anunnaki and how they are lowering our energy field, and the entities are doing that to take energy because they're stuck in their power grab. Usually, like how they describe the Anunnaki, the original gods, Anu, Marduk, Enki, you know, those original creator gods are still alive. They live like 1 million years, and they're stuck in their power. They're addicted to their power and control, but they're stuck in that. They don't know how to get out of it. And yeah, there's a whole, it is interesting to look into the history, you know, what the Sumerians, you know, the first culture in the world, the Sumerians, they talk all about the Anunnaki. They have these big statues of these people, and the shamans in South America. Oh, the Anunnaki came down here, took half of their genetics and mixed it with monkeys and made you guys. You know, 200 or 40,000 years ago, you know, a long time ago. And they did that to us. That's why we just rapidly appeared. You know, we evolved rapidly. Like, oh, all of a sudden, man's Sumerian technology.
Like
they have the 1260. They have numbers, right? The video last night
the
talked about
1260 base counting.
Yeah, it's like, where the fuck did that come from? Like the precession equinox. Well, you would have to constantly observe the planet for 11,500 years to know that there's a precession equinox.
Or 29,000 for a full
how the fuck did they know that
year.
stuff? It's like,
and the 29,000 divided by 432 is like 2120, whatever.
Yeah.
All those numbers divide out, and you're like, what?
well, they if you look at mathematics and how they do that is if you look at a pattern, you could apply it to the next larger pattern. There is order and structure in there. That's everyone's like, oh, chaos, Big Bang, it all blew up. No, there's order in there. There's everything is in order.
Well, it's like,
that's why the mathematics come out. They didn't make the fucking numbers up.
Yeah.
They didn't say, oh, 2660. No, the guy's like, oh, okay, and this is that, and oh, look, it's backed up by this and this and this, and that's what we're doing.
Well,
and so like going back to mathematics, that's why there is equalization between the meter and the foot. The Egyptians were using both the meter and the foot. Yeah. It's in all their fucking measurements, both of them. And they're like, but they all both match. And that's how you could take...
Well, how do they match? What do you mean they match?
The lengths of the walls and the angles.
Oh.
And their calendar systems all used the 1260 and the meter and all those mathematics. And you could go into the Vedic calendar system, our calendar systems, the Mayans, and they all have the same, they all sync in the same way. Not in the same way, but they all do sync. They don't cancel out the next person. Oh, I got a new calendar system. Nobody created that calendar system. It's a different way of a different perspective on
Well, then you have someone like Robespierre, who French Revolution tried to create a new calendar. And that didn't turn out well for them.
No,
that's the thing.
Now. It's like,
but that's what they're trying to do now.
You create these new calendars. No, nobody creates the calendars. It's just a different perspective.
Well, it's like the alpha and the omega, talking about the big and the small. And like I told you before, like, or the ratio of the size of, you know, the sun to the Earth to the planets is the same as like electron to the nucleus. And then like how now they see these huge filaments. Like there's the article I just saw.
String theory.
The big, well, it's not string theory. It's like these big filaments through space that look like goddamn brain synapses. You know, when you look to do brain imaging, how synapses zip around in DNA strands or whatever. That's what they see in these giant space structures. So like they've gone so big now that they're seeing the other end of it. You know, they look down this way and you look up that way, you're looking at the same thing. And that's why, you know,
Yeah, if
think
you
of a
look into
hologram.
light, eventually it'll wrap back around to you,
Mm.
right? Because you can't, like, how do you get that perfectly straight? Because if you're going at a distance, it's eventually gonna come,
So you're like, coming
right?
back around. Wow.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, one of the
But the
theories
big-
on time travel is go faster than the speed of light. So if you could go faster than the speed of light in a circle and pass yourself up, then
Yeah.
you'd be going in.
But this the illusion
the
of
future.
time is also, you know, time and space. That means it's the illusion of space-time. Like, distance is an illusion, you know, because it's the measurement of speed of light, how long it took to get there. That's all space is. But if you can go faster than the speed of light, time and space doesn't mean anything. Like, you can't say it's infinite. You know, say, or space can't be infinite, or I say it can't be, say that it is. How do you measure 1 foot within infinity? If it's, you know, 1 foot has to be a context of like 1 foot is
It's
something
compared
to 10
to another
feet.
foot.
Compared
Yeah.
to 2 foot or 10 foot or 100 feet, it has to be related to something. But how, you can't have something that's not related. If the overall thing is not related to anything, how can I have any measurement? How can
That's
you measure?
why you don't, like, the remote visionists don't name things.
Yes, back to that. Like,
They just like, close your mind. What comes to your picture? Like that quick. Like, what is it? Oh, it's that. Yeah.
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 So it's like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
interesting-
Don't influence it. You
Mhm.
know, is basically what they're
but
saying.
that's really interesting what you said about thinking about it coming back around. Because it's like the size of things, like say big space, you know, space is big. Things move slow, say you're a million years, but it's the size, that same ratio of the time and the size. Like there's the weight to gravity to speed ratio, but then there's size to time ratio. And it's like, big things appear to be moving slow. Like you talk about cosmologic things that's billions of years, but you talk about micro things that's like microseconds. You know, like an electron is, you know, how it's so fast, it's just so fast, it's infinitely fast. If it's infinitely big, it's like, it's coming back around. That's actually really interesting what you said as far as it bending back.
So, like in the Mayan calendar, you have 20 glyphs and 13 tones. In shamanism, one of the two most powerful numbers has always been 1320. That was one of the reasons why, end of 2012, 2013 was so powerful, because of the 2013. It was the end of their large 260,000 year cycle, but it was also funny how it synchronized up with the other calendar as 2013.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. When they say it was the end of the Mayan calendar.
Yeah,
whatever.
which you can't have the end of a cyclical calendar.
Yeah, it was
What they did say was it was the end of man, and they literally meant masculinity. And what they were saying, and they know this now, there's 4 energies that come from the sun. And I think that they're the earth, wind, air, and fire, basically, and they spark creativity in us. Rays in civilizations, you could watch sunspots in civilizations go up and down by the energy of the sun. And so you have this divine source. Well, they knew in these cycles that, oh look, masculinity, we know in our grid pattern here, this energy from the sun, the YY or what, you know, fire, whatever it is that sparks masculine masculine stuff, is it was going to fade away, and that's what they warned. They didn't warn it'd be the end of time. People took it like, oh, end of man, oh, end of time. They were like, man, everything. But no, they didn't say that.
So it's frequency, the sun's pulsing differently, or what?
Yeah.
Or the universe differently?
No, well, it could be in tune with the galactic center.
Yeah.
And it's all part of the divine. Like anything is part of the divine. COVID, drop in masculinity,
Yeah.
you know, whatever you call it. But you know, those are the things that the Mayans watch for, right?
Yeah.
They knew those patterns, and they were like different things. So what's cool about the Mayan calendars is there's 20 energy personalities and 13 numbers, and the numbers are like tones, and the glyphs are like personalities. So like one of the glyphs is like Akbal. Akbal is this sleepy, looks within place, like the abyss. So you could have Akbal, and you could have 4, which is, so today would be Akbal 4. 4 is like order and structure, base of the pyramid. So you could have one day that's Akbal 4. Let's say today's Akbal 4. In that grid pattern of the Mayan calendar of 1320, as long as you know one day, you could know the whole pattern, and you will find in the pattern 1 year that's Akbal 4, or 1/28,000 cycle year. But just because today's Akbal 4 doesn't mean that our whole year's Akbal 4, but it's that whole pattern.
Oh, gotcha. I see.
Right?
So it like builds on itself, then
Yeah.
it's then it builds on it again.
Yeah, and so because it's cyclical, and so as long as you know what that one day is in the pattern, in the wheels,
It's almost
you
like
could
the
know what that
think
is,
of the
right?
golden ratio spiral,
Right.
like the shape of the
And
shell.
so,
or whatever.
so when you are, what they're saying is when you're in the moment, let's say you're completely in Akbal 4, you're today's Akbal 4, you will be connected to all the Akbal 4s in the past and the future, and that's the deja vu experience.
Wow.
That's the experience of, God, I swear there's something else going on here. And it's because you're connected to all, energy-wise, to all the other Akbal 4s in the past and the future. And if you're worried about the past or the future, which are different energies, tomorrow's Caven 3, it's a different energy. And so if you're in the moment...
So you happen to align with that energy based on, by happenstance, then that's the thing, like deja vu kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't seem related to any, like...
But the 1111, like you could say the 11 experience. I'm sitting with a psychic, she goes, I see 4 dots in your aura, Andy. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. 4 dots? She goes, yeah, I see 4 dots. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's 4 in the Mayan calendar. So I'm over here at my house. I have the Mayan oracle cards, all the glyphs and the tones in an oracle card deck, and I'm shuffling the cards, and a card flies out, whoops, lands up, and it's 4. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. So I pick it up, I put it back in the deck, I go, that's kind of weird. I'm like, that was the 4, that was kind of weird. I just had a psychic tell me about 4, and I'm shuffling the cards, and I pick it. I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm like, this is weird, right? I'm like, what the fuck? Like, no surprise to me, that's how my life is. I'm just like, oh, what the fuck, you know? And 4 is using discrimination wisely. How they describe it is taking a raw diamond and cutting off what you don't like to make the diamond. It's order and structure. I also think it's the yin-yang, white, black, but I also think it's the 1111. And you'll have these where you see 1111 all the time, and it's that where you're using your discrimination to create something of order and structure and balance and wise and navigating through life, and you're in that synchronization, and spirit or whatever will synchronize up with you and give you the 1111 or a marble or whatever, you know, that.
Well, or it's like, I'll have a thought, we'll talk about seeing someone on the street, or like you have a thought, I'll have like an exact sentence in my head, any arbitrary sentence, boom, on the radio there's I had a car salesman will say the exact sentence.
Yeah.
A second later,
Oh, yeah.
2 seconds,
Yeah.
like right then, I'll
Yeah.
think it like, oh, it's a great day, and then like, it's a great day to buy a car, right?
Oh,
That
yeah.
sort of thing.
I had
like
one
micro ones.
just the other day, the same, just today I think somebody,
And they're so hard to like...
And so back to the card, I'm telling my grandma this story. I'm like, oh my God, Grandma, and I'm shuffling the cards, and I picked it. Yeah, it flew out, Grandma, and then I picked it, and I'm shuffling it, and I pick it, and as I said, I picked it, and I pulled it out of the deck, and it was the same card.
What?
I'm like, what the? She looks at me, she goes, yeah, what? I'm like, what did you just do? I'm like, and I'm telling the story the other day, and I look over at the clock, it's 11:11. I'm like, look at that. There's 11:11 right there. I'm like, that's like 4 levels deep. I'm like, that's fucking weird. I'm like, and all it does to me is just give me a smile. I'm like, fucking right on.
Well,
you know, when you want to, combat me and say, oh, Andy, that's bullshit, I just go, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to
I'm
anyone.
like, whatever. I'm like, I don't feel sorry for you because it's so divine as I am. You're the same divine, but it's like, I'm like, oh wow, you got some adventure on your way. You got something coming that's going to blow your mind at some point in your life.
My favorite's at work, like, house building. We just finished this house basically yesterday, that big one. I just kind of literally yesterday, but I just loved like the random things that work out that I didn't plan, like the bunch of posters sticking out and the boards all land and like, oh, I hope these are gonna fucking fit. I didn't think, things you realize you didn't think about, and then they work perfect.
Yeah.
Or
just enough real.
Or just I need a board that's 28 inches, 28 and a half inch long. I'm like, pick it up, boom, perfect. Just little micros. I'm like, oh, I always joke that it's baby Jesus. I'm like, oh, thanks, baby Jesus. Like they're on your shoulder helping you like get your shit done. So then you have this instant, and each one of these little micro confirmations, I'm just like, oh, I'm on the right, and I just tell myself I'm on the right path. Whatever the path is, I'm like, oh, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It'll just be a micro. That's all I can do. I'm like, oh, okay. Like,
and you could, some of the things I play around in that mind frame is how maybe I'll come back in time and it was my higher self doing that stuff to myself. Be like, oh, maybe it's me from another dimension doing all that weird stuff to get me to wake up.
Yeah. Interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's more that meets the eye. Oh, we've been going an hour and a half. I think my throat's giving out, or I just got a tickle in my throat. Huh. Covered a lot of ground. What was I? But yeah, I'd really just been the bot NPC concept. I was kind of just really thinking about. But this, like you were saying, yeah, as soon as Neuralink, yeah, that's what's going to happen, though. The Neuralink will happen 5 years soon.
He's probably getting it from extraterrestrial.
Well, he thinks it's happening sooner than later.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he was on fucking Joe Rogan there a couple months ago.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it's within 5 years. So then the people are going to get it will be rich people for the first bit, because it's going to be expensive. They're going to be fucking superhumans, but they're going to be pseudo-cyborg fake humans. We're going to then rely on the technology for their abilities instead of their soul, right? Or maybe not, I don't know, that's just a general guess. In terms of they becoming pseudo-robots, they're getting sucked into the AI, then they're going to be dependent on the AI to help their brain think. Like if I'm sitting here, how do I construct a thought? And AI's like, here's your thought, like it's going to start thinking for you.
Well,
to some extent.
The grays, you see the grays and big heads and entities.
Yeah.
A lot of people, there's all this information coming out from, the grays communicated with me. He says that they're us from the future. That they lost their genetic coding and they're fucked. And they're warning us, like, if you keep going down this line, you're going to turn out a gray like me, no reproductive organs, have to wear a suit and spray enzymes on me because I have no digestive system. And I can't feel. Because we've destroyed, in time, we could potentially destroy the DNA that much. By...
Because think about,
yeah,
say someone
you really do, like, run that line down. It's like, wow, that's a fucking dangerous line.
Say they get superhumans, and then there'll be people, then the masses will want, it's like an iPhone. First the people had iPhones, then everyone's got an iPhone. If you don't have an iPhone, you're a weirdo. Or a smartphone. You're like, oh, you don't have a smartphone, you have a flip phone. You're like, it's archaic. Because A, it's this old technology, but B, you don't have the access to the information. It's like, there is information there, whether it's good or bad or useful or whatever, it's just there. Like, all of humanity's information, I can get it all right there. Like, not all of it, like, digitally, right?
Yeah.
Just the concept. But then you wonder...
Is it helping you out?
Yeah. Is it helping you in the long run? It's helping you keep up with the Joneses.
If you use it to like,
because what happens
express
when you have,
your passion more, yeah.
Or what happens when you have an entire country that, like, we're all going to do the Neuralink. This is the thing, you're all doing it. And they're like, okay, sure, whatever, they all do it. So you have entire countries that are then now modified versus countries that aren't, or rich, or classes that are, like rich people or poor people or whatever, and then interacting with those people, they would they then become like the bot NPC, or they would think you're the NPC, or vice versa, right?
I think in evolution, you need a little suffering, you need struggle, you need challenge. That's how the masculine grows. The masculine grows through challenge.
I mean, is that to say there would be any challenge? Because I mean,
well, that's the thing. It's like you and I are like, why the fuck would you want to put a computer chip in your head? I like the
it's trying to make it easier for you.
It's like, oh, you'd see better. I'm like, well, they get better glasses, I guess. It is also defining you as, oh, you need this. You're not perfect.
Well, and it goes along more concrete.
Which you are.
More concrete parallel would also be like the smart cars. The cars are driving around without you driving it now. So, and I guess he's got his cars have been on the road for 2 billion miles now. All these test cars are going. So there's videos you can see of people driving down the freeway. They film the dude in the car next is asleep. Like, this is already happening. So these smart cars can drive super fucking fast. So they're talking about when do you get highways that are then only smart cars, because the smart cars can go 200 miles an hour. There's no human fucking up, things fucking up. Therefore, the humans aren't even allowed to drive on the smart car highway, because they're gonna be the ones fucking causing the car wrecks. Then people are gonna forget how to learn to drive. Like, oh, is that a skill we need to do? You know, you're taking that step of your ability away, of your freedom, so to basically.
Well, check this out. Joe Biden last night on town hall threw a little hint in there that they were thinking about taking over all power systems in the U.S. federal government.
Taking them over, because they're like private entities or whatever.
Yeah, GE
or whatever.
Chugash Electric. We should have all. You know, it'll be better because then we could put charging stations for all our cars on our streets, and it'll be good. We'll take them into green energy. And you know, one side of it's like, hey, that's a fucking great idea. The other side's like, what the fuck you're doing? You're taking over the whole electrical system. We're like, and you like the Elon Musk guy? Like, he wants to put a computer chip in my head?
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's an interesting parallel into actual politics.
Like, what the fuck? I'm like, that's why you don't. That's why I'm like, whoa, okay.
Well, people who want to rely on the system, they want to rely on, like, the government's helping me out, yay. But then you forget how to take care of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, it literally comes down to that.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
You know, that's, you know, ideally we would have socialism, everybody be taken care of. But, you know, where that all plays in is you know, not everybody's born healthy and perfect, and, you know, but that's.
Check this time. I think this is about.
That's. You know, if we commit to it and we have good systems, you know, I think on other dimensions, extraterrestrials, I do think that they are probably more. They are socialist republics.
Yeah.
They are, but they get along,
Yeah.
and they know the power, the personality, or the consciousness, and they know that everybody affects everybody else. You know, when you know, just like the random event generator, you have